Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, your one-stop weekend retreat for creative inspiration.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're joining us for the first time, you are so welcome. But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, and we have got answers.
A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all of your inspirations and fascinations.
Here's the deal. We are makers and we make all kinds of things.
If you're anything like us and you're making stuff all the time, or you want to be making stuff all the time, you know that the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry.
So we're on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off our asses and make things like this very podcast.
Or a riveting portrayal of race relations in America based solely on interviews performed verbatim.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Or, in counter to that, a slog through the mud that reveals history and treasures.
Oh, I want that. Every episode, we're going to reach into the Spark File and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
And if you're not careful, you might just get your hands dirty in the best possible way. So without further ado, let's open up the Spark File. Welcome. Welcome.
Hi, Susan.
Cams.
Baby Blackwell. What? Oh, tell me.
Well, this is crazy but true. Last night, a friend of mine, Ashley Van Buren, who I want to shout out. Hi, Ashley. I want to shout Ashley out because I failed to mention when we did the recording of the podcast live at the Metropolitan Opera.
Yes.
Ashley Van Buren was the person who originally provided me with the Brundabar spark.
Ashley, thank you.
Ashley. That's Ashley.
Thank you for that.
Didn't you want to say who sparked you with Count Ludwig?
Yes, my friend Bryn Boudier, who I adore, and she's totally opera. She sat with me and just told me stories about her opera adventures.
She's all opera all the time.
She's all opera all the time.
Thank you, friends. We were so excited and so nervous and so jacked up and so forgetting.
We needed help. We needed support.
We didn't shout you out. So we want to thank you. But Ashley texted, she's great and she's got a real eye for sparks. And she texted me last night as I was falling asleep. And she wanted to share this fun thing she recently learned about on her travels. And imagine how excited I was to text her back and tell her that the thing she texted me was my spark for today.
No way. Oh,
isn't that crazy?
My God.
We both just simultaneously shit ourselves.
So I can't wait to hear your spark and Ashley's spark.
There you go. They're
your
all
combo.
It's an Ashley Spark world, and I just live in it. What else is going on? We're super excited about our upcoming Spark File New Year 2020 Creativity Workshop and Live podcast.
Holy crap. Susan, what I love most about it is that it's not just the workshop, which it in and of itself is amazing.
Not just a workshop, baby.
But once we get to the completion of the workshop, we're going to sit there together and we're going to record a live episode of the Spark File.
I know that means that before January 5th, I've got to come up with a really good spark.
You need a really good one.
Because those people are going to be like, all right, tough stuff. What you got?
Well, it's just, a reminder of a live theater. You get your instant feedback on whether that was crappy or not. So here we can fool ourselves. As long as we're entertaining ourselves, we're in good shape.
I know. We're going to take it back to our live theater roots.
That's right.
I'm super excited. I love the like-minded people that show up for the workshop and live podcast are really high quality people. So if there's any part of you if you're anything like me and nervous to go into a room full of strangers to try something new, it is the kindest, warmest, most fun, funny group of people.
That's right.
It's such a good group.
It's so fun to see also the relationships that are formed and the accountability partnerships that come out of it. Because we always see then after the fact, people talking to each other on social and supporting each other and cheering each other on.
Yes.
And man, that feels good.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about that. We're gearing up for that. And that is happening. And of course, the holidays and this creativity challenge that we're currently rocking.
We're in the midst of
the Spark File
#
TSF Creativity Challenge is such an interesting opportunity. I, in addition to other kinds of creativity, use it to make this year. If you're getting a Christmas present from, if you're looking at, if you're looking at me, you're looking at a homemade Christmas present.
Oh, right. That's awesome.
Is it?
Yes.
It depends on how inspired and sparked I am.
No, it's totally awesome. I will treasure, I have said this to my family, if you're listening, I don't know if you are, but I've said it a million times over. Like, I'm in for the sentimental, meaningful, I made this by hand. I thought about you as I was doing it.
I'm getting you a clay ashtray with my handprint in it. POTUS's paw print.
I can't wait.
I don't know.
I love it.
I feel like I don't have a clear idea. I don't know what I'm doing for Nathan. I don't know what I'm doing for you.
It's going to come to you. It's going to come to you.
I'm going to release the stress for now.
Mm-hmm.
But that has also been fun. Trying to figure out what you're going to get made for Christmas. Bloobly blah. Should we jump in?
Yes, I got to hear this spark.
Oh, I'm so excited. My spark phrase, I'm summing it all up in these words.
Yes.
Getting your eye in.
I'm curious.
Getting your eye in. A phrase I had never heard before this spark. Getting your eye in.
My attention.
Sources for my spark are bountiful. Get ready. Articles from the website Atlas Obscura, a TV show called Mud Men, a 2-minute documentary on YouTube made in 1962, a YouTuber called Nicola White Mudlark and her website, tidelineart.com, a short film by Kit Harwood, a great Facebook group called London Mudlark, davidneat.wordpress.com, amazon.com, victorianlondon.org, a great piece on abcnews.com, good old Wikipedia, and the following podcasts: Boat Radio, Your London Legacy, Living History with Matt McLaughlin, and the Ethical Podcast, which featured a talk given by an author named Laura Makelum. I'm not even kidding you.
Girl, you can do some research.
Here's the gag. I feel like I've scratched the surface.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Well,
So,
I cannot wait.
So
it's getting my eye in, getting my eye out. What is it?
Getting your eye in. But just put that in the back of your mind.
Okay, I'm putting that aside.
Time travel with me, Cams.
Okay, I'm going with you. I'm closing my eyes.
I have this very clear memory from my childhood. It's at my grandparents' house. They lived in a house with a storefront florist shop. But correct that image that you're cooking up in your mind. It wasn't clean and quaint and lovely. It was totally hoarded out. It was totally haunted looking. In fact, a lot of my recurring childhood dreams were set in that house, but it's another juicy spark for another juicy day. The image that I have is of my grandfather. Wherever he went, he was frequently bent over at the waist, nose towards the ground, scanning, sort of like, the position that an ostrich with its head in the sand looks like, sort of like an ostrich. And he was always scanning the ground for anything might catch his eye. His clothes and hands were always dirty from his work and his life, and his eyes were always scanning the surface, and his hand was extended to pick up and pocket what might catch his eye. So, flash forward through time. The following is from a recent talk given by an author named Laura Makelum. These are her words. I want to take you back to Victorian London. Imagine you're standing beside the river. The air is thick with smog. The river's busy, and there's steamships, colliers, barges, men shouting, and the Thames is basically a moving cesspit. Now, baby cams, now gentle listeners, the year is 1881. And these are words from the Victorian social commentator Richard Roe from his writing, Life in the London Streets. This is what you see. An old woman with a nutcracker nose and chin which almost dipped into the filthy slush into which she peered, and dirty flesh, as well as a scrap or two of dirty linen showing through the slashes of her burst gown, over which, for warmth's sake, she wore a tippet of ragged sackcloth. She slinks off to her lair, followed by an imp bearing a rusty, crumpled colander piled with its find. Its sex is indistinguishable. It has long, mud-hued hair hanging down in a mat over its shoulders. Through the hair, one gets a glimpse of a never-washed little face whose only sign of intelligence is an occasional glance of wicked knowingness. What were these people Richard Roe was describing back in 1881, Camion? These people were known as mudlarks. That whole passage that I just shared with you is the beginning of this talk that this woman named Laura Makelum gave. And my spark today is all about mudlarking.
What?
Have you ever heard this term before?
Never.
Camion, hold on to your butts, because this spark...
I literally actually am holding on to my butt right now. Do you see me? That is so crazy. I just started holding my butt.
This is such a camion-shaped spark, and I picked it out and cultivated it especially for you.
Thank you, Blackwell.
So I first caught this spark on the podcast, weirdly, the Slate Political Gabfest, which is a totally liberal political chat show. One of its co-hosts, David Plotz, who is also the CEO of Atlas Obscura, which, do you know Atlas Obscura?
I love it.
It's an online magazine devoted to discovery and exploration.
Yes.
And he briefly mentioned mudlarking, and I was like, huh?
What?
And it just caught my ear. And I'm now going to attempt to do my very best to unpack mudlarking.
I cannot wait.
You cannot wait.
Literally cannot wait.
Yeah, this is so right up your alley. So according to Wikipedia, a mudlark is someone who scavenges in river mud for items of value.
Specifically river mud.
Okay. Though there are the other things like stream larking, and there are things like that, but specifically river mud. In the 1700s and 1800s, mudlarks would search the muddy shore of the River Thames at low tide for anything that could be sold. That would be scraps of coal, that might be rope, it might be old tools, it might be things that were discarded or lost. By the end of the 1700s, people dwelling near the river could scrape a subsistence level living this way. Mudlarks were either usually youngsters or the elderly. And though most mudlarks were male, there were girls and women who were also mudlarkers. Historically, becoming a mudlark was a choice that was dictated by poverty and lack of skills. The work conditions were filthy and uncomfortable because... hold on to your nose, excrement and waste would wash onto the shores from raw sewage that was dumped in the river, flushed into the river, and sometimes also things like the corpses of humans and dogs and cats. And because there were broken glass and things like that, it was easy to get injured doing this work. And the income generated was meager, but on the flip side, mudlarks had a degree of independence since, subject to the tides, the hours they worked were entirely at their own discretion, and they also kept everything that they made as a result of their labor.
Right. They're their own boss.
You're your own mudlarking boss.
I'm thinking, I just have this image of, the people who collect aluminum cans.
That's right.
Et cetera. Okay.
Yeah. By the early 1900s, being a professional mudlark was no longer viewed as an acceptable or lawful pursuit, right? But,
what?
Yeah. So the mudlarkers were also the lowest of the low on the totem pole of almost like, so if pirates were at the very top, people that would like jump on, like steal things off ships and like throw them down, the mudlarkers were like at the very bottom of the barrel.
But I'd have to imagine that the city would at least be glad that the mudlarkers are cleaning up in a way.
Well, I don't know that that's true, Camion. Okay. And I don't know that that's true.
Convince me otherwise.
All right. So, today, all of that has changed, and mudlarks and mudlarking still exist, but modern day mudlarks don't do it to survive. Mudlarking is their passion, and these folks are amateur archaeologists and historians.
Oh my God, I love these people.
You feeling me, Cam?
So just a hobby, like Saturday, let's go mudlarking.
Yes, that's right.
Let's see what we can find.
I just got a chill in my body.
Oh my God.
So a British politician named John Eliot Burns once said, "The River Thames is liquid history. So much has happened on its waters."
Oh, wow.
Don't you love that saying?
Wow, I do.
Liquid history is the name of a new nail polish color. Could be a nail polish color. Liquid history could be a band name.
I'm thinking shampoo, but liquid history could totally be a band
What
name.
does liquid history shampoo smell like? Books? Library books that you forgot to return.
Yes,
sure,
all of those. But that's true of the East River.
Oh my God,
that's true of the Hudson.
It's a great name of a record. Liquid history.
I mean, yes.
I feel like we should cut that out and keep that spark for ourselves.
That's right. You heard nothing. None of you heard anything.
What you were saying, this is true of all rivers, that they're liquid history?
Well, the Hudson, the East River, like you got to believe that those port towns and towns that essentially built our country have more history. I don't know.
Well,
yeah,
yes.
Is that true?
Well, but there's an interesting distinction between these bodies of water and the Thames, and we'll get to it in a second.
Oh, I can't wait.
So, what was I saying? Oh, yes. My latest LP, Liquid History. The River Thames is liquid history, and so much has happened on its waters, and few are more keenly attuned to this than mudlarks. So according to the aforementioned author and speaker, Laura Makelum, whom I just quoted, that was from her appearance on the Ethical podcast. And she said the Thames was like a highway. It has been heavily trafficked and peopled for centuries, and a lot of life has fallen, dropped, and been lost and thrown and flushed into that river for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And what makes a major river like the Thames different than, say, the Seine and other parts of the Hudson is that significant portions of it are tidal, meaning that the tide washes in and the tide rolls out twice every 24 hours. And so things are revealed with each low tide.
Okay.
Got it?
Interesting.
So there are, there's the canalways in Amsterdam.
Yep.
Those are not tidal, but recently they drained one and excavated it, and they found in a tiny piece of the channel, they found something like, I'm pulling this number out of my butt, but like 750,000 objects. So in a river like the Seine, or a river like parts of the Hudson, which there are some parts of it that I think are tidal and brackish, but all of these objects are there. It's just that they're not tidal. So the tide doesn't go out. You can't access them.
Bring those items in.
There you go.
Wow.
So twice each lunar month, due to the equinox and something that are called spring tides, not the season spring, but spring tides are at their lowest of all. And that's when you can really, the tide is really out. And if you are a mudlarker, you live by these tides. They are your Bible, because when tides are low, all sorts of what Laura Makelum calls ownerless objects are sitting right there on the surface of the foreshore of the Thames. What kinds of things, you might ask, might you find when you mudlark, baby cams? Musket balls, rings, old coins and pottery, including Roman pottery and coins from AD 300.
Stop.
Yes. Neolithic flint blades, boar's tusks, which boars went extinct in the 1200s, were reintroduced in the 1700s and went extinct again, which helps identify how old the artifact is.
Oh my God.
Roman hairpins, medieval buckles, Tudor buttons, pewter pilgrim badges commemorating their pilgrimages, Victorian toys, messages in bottles, live hand grenades, human skeletal remains, 18th century wig curlers for those big wigs that were fashionable during the 1700s.
I'm freaking out.
Is your ass getting rocked?
I want to do it. Really, like, people find this stuff all the time? Or is it like, here's a rare find?
All the time.
Oh my God.
Now, not every time you go out as a mudlarker.
Sure. I want a Tudor button.
You want a Tudor? You get your
I
eyes.
really want a Tudor
You're
button.
getting your eye in for a Tudor button? Okay. So Laura Makelem, I just love this. She says she gets a kick from that first moment when you pick up an object when mudlarking. It's like reaching back in time and touching an object for the first time since it was last touched hundreds of years prior. She's fascinated by its history. Who made it? Who bought it? What did they use it for? Did they lose it? She's fascinated by the direct link that these objects have with the past. A direct link not to kings and queens and conquerors, but to ordinary people and their day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. That's what I think of too. Like the coins that they lost could have meant everything to them, a ring, like just so many things that could have had life-altering consequences for them.
If you go mudlarking, one of the very first things you will probably find is all or a part of a clay pipe.
I think I'd like you to go back and rephrase that and say, when we go.
Oh, there you go. Wait for it. When you go mudlarking, when we go mudlarking.
That would be when.
One of the very first things you will probably find is all or part of a clay pipe. These clay pipes, they're small, cream colored, perhaps a little bit of orange or brown or like black. Sometimes they're simple, sometimes they're ornate. The more decorated pipes are called fancies, and they have all sorts of decorations. There's ships and anchors, there's rose and thistle, there's basket weave, there's snake scales, there's Masonic designs, there's military designs. I even saw one that's the bowl of a pipe. The bowl of the pipe is a woman sitting on a commode.
Oh my God.
You may also find the stems. Or as I said, the bowls, and sometimes if you're lucky, you might find the whole pipe. Wow. But why are there so many clay pipes on the Thames foreshore?
Yeah.
These clay pipes have been around since the 1500s when tobacco was first introduced in the UK. It was brought over from Virginia. And at first, the cost of tobacco was very high and smoking was only enjoyed by the rich. But then it became this very widespread craze. And by the mid-1600s, clay pipe makers were springing up all over the UK. Men, women, and children were all smoking. And at one point, it was actively encouraged to ward off the plague. So, side spark, if you're sparked to make a historical drama set in this era or do a painting or something set in this era or a movie, whatever, be sure to include the fun detail of a smoking child.
Oh my God.
So by the beginning of the 18th century, there were thousands of pipe makers to keep up with the demand, and the size of the pipe bowl increased over time. It was speculated because tobacco was becoming more affordable, so you could smoke up more in your pipe bowl. But it's a way that you can discern how old the pipe that you have found is.
Yeah.
The very first of these clay pipes are sometimes called fairy pipes because they're so small, and when they were first being rediscovered long after they'd fallen out of fashion, their finders thought that the tiny pipes might have been smoked by fairies. I don't know if those early mudlarkers were super well educated, but
tiny people by infants.
Yeah.
Because they smoked as well.
So these little clay pipes were cheap. Oh, another fun side spark. They called it drinking tobacco. It was smoking, but like sipping it in, the verb that they used was not smoking. It was called drinking tobacco.
More liquid history.
There you go. So these little clay pipes were cheap to produce. And back in the 17th century, you could go to a pub, you could order a drink, you could also order a pipe, and sometimes it was preloaded with tobacco.
Wow.
And if they got clogged up or you were a chain smoker and it grew too hot for you to continue to smoke it, people would discard them and start a new one. According to the Society for Clay Pipe Research,
hello.
that's a real thing. Clay pipes had a short life expectancy. They weren't single use, but they did have a short life expectancy. And once they were broken or clogged, they were of no further use and they were discarded. And innkeepers were said to sweep them up and probably they were chucked into the Thames. Modern day mudlarker Nicola White, who has she has the YouTube handle Nicola White Mudlark, compares it to future mudlarkers avidly collecting cigarette butts.
What?
Yes. And there's a lot of them. So if/when you/we go mudlarking
when we
on the Thames, that is like the first thing that everybody says the first thing that you will find is a clay pipe.
Oh my God.
Or a piece of a clay pipe.
I want to.
I know you do, girl. How well do I know you?
I want a fancy.
You want I want a fairy pipe. I want a super old, teeny tiny that I can give to my Chihuahua POTUS so he can smoke it.
Sweet POTUS.
Laura Makelum talks about how the river sorts things of similar size, shape, weight, and material. So it's not uncommon to find, for instance, a lot of pins together. Wow. When buttons were expensive, people used to be pinned and laced into their clothes. These pins were handmade and they were a necessity for every house. Babies were swaddled and pinned. Corpses were pinned into shrouds and people were pinned into their clothing with hundreds and hundreds of pins. Can you imagine how hard it would be to like make out with somebody during this time period?
And then you're like,
shit.
oh wait, Dad's coming down the hall.
Ouch.
Pin me back up. Pin me back up.
I was just talking about getting poked. And you were talking about getting poked.
We were both talking about getting poked.
There you go. You know those great big Elizabethan ruffs, those great big ruffly collars that people would wear?
Yeah.
They were held together with many, many pins. And apparently people would shed those pins as they walked. And there were all different weights and gauges of pins for different fabrics. So small pins for like silks and big, heavy, straight pins that you would use for wool, for thick wool. And when you tried to shove a pin through fabric that was too dense or too heavy, the pins would bend and people would discard them. So if you're mudlarking, you might find a lot of these sweet little bent copper alloy pins.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is making me think also like the next time you're performing in a period piece.
Yeah.
Like just think about how differently you would move if
you knew that you were getting
clothing
poked
was
with
held on with pins.
Or that I know my mom made a lot of our clothes when we were growing up and she would not get all the pins out like in the seams. And you would just be sitting there minding your own business and all of a sudden you would be poked with a pin. Pretty common experience in my childhood, which is very much like this. I think you probably had a fair amount of...
I just imagine just like reaching across the table for the salt and pepper.
A flaggard.
Yeah, these are like if your clothing is really held on by pins, that's a potential poke anywhere.
There you go. The stories of what people have found mudlarking are legendary. One of the most interesting things Laura Makelum has found, well, she was talking about finding a human skull and human remains. Yeah. And
that's what I hope I don't find.
Well, this ended up being, she had a supposition. She had a supposition that it might be from a prisoner who was being conveyed on sort of like there's a name for it, but like a prison barge. It's called a hulk, a prison hulk.
Okay.
And that may be the case. Some forensic testing has put it at like 200 years old and has been, I think, transported to a university in Australia where they're doing research on it right now. But one of the most interesting things that she has found is a glass eye, which she said was staring up at her up from the mud like old Father Thames.
Way.
But she's then the thing that I feel like speaks to you, Cams, is the history associated with these things. Yeah. And what she said about it is that after one of the world wars, there would have been more glass eyes and prosthetics manufactured, made for people who had been injured during the conflict. And she also said that pretty much anything that could be flushed down a toilet ends up in the river. So it's possible it could have been thrown in the river, but it's possible it could have been flushed down the toilet and ended up in the river.
Sure. It could have been in a body that decomposed in the river too.
Do you want to see it?
Yes.
Do you want to see the eye?
Yes.
This is what was staring up at her on the foreshore of the River Thames.
Oh my God. We'll post a picture.
Yeah.
We will post a picture.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine that looking up at you?
No.
Hi. Laura Makelum tells a story about how she found what she later learned to be a bomb, which she unwittingly carried home on the train.
No.
Yes. So during
a grenade type thing?
No. A B-O-M-B, bomb.
Oh, holy shit.
There's another mudlarker who I've mentioned, Nicola White, who did find a grenade and reported it to the authorities. And then they sent out the military and a bomb squad came and detonated it, and it was live.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because here's the deal. During the Blitz and other conflicts, the river and the foreshore provide this very soft landing for these explosive devices. And there were quite a few unexploded bombs and hand grenades. She said as soon as she figured out what she had done, she threw the bomb back in the river, which I was like, oh no. But she admitted it publicly, so I'm not telling a tale on her. One of the reasons, like I said, Kim, one of the reasons I was so excited to share the spark with you is because I know you love history.
I love it.
And this spark really feels like the confluence, if that is the right word, of its mindfulness, its nature loving, its seeking, its history, its archaeology, sometimes its genealogy. And here's one small example of how all those things can come together, along with some other fun elements like a little touch of activism and the love of animals. So from her website, tidelineart.com, mudlarker extraordinaire Nicola White tells the story about how in July of 2018, she found what looked like this little token in the Thames mud. And when she got it home and cleaned it up, it turned out to be a tag from a dog collar of a pet dog named Bonzo Tabner. And there was an address, 21 Pelton Road in Greenwich, SE10. So she researched Bonzo's story and discovered that there had been a Tabner family living in Pelton Road during the early 1930s. She was then able to find and speak to the grandson of Bonzo's owner. This woman who was still alive, quite elderly, recalled how Bonzo had been their pet dog during World War II and how she had been so thrilled to be reunited with the dog after she returned to Greenwich because they had been evacuated during the war. During Nicola's research, she came across a book called Bonzo's War, written by Claire and Christy Campbell. And it turns out that Bonzo was one of the most popular dogs' names of that time due to a popular illustrated dog named Bonzo.
Oh,
there's a spark for you. That's a high-quality dog name. But back to the book. So Bonzo's War details the fate of over 2.5 million pets during World War II who were euthanized. Since cats and dogs were not allowed, they weren't allowed to be brought to bomb shelters, the government advised pet owners to preemptively euthanize these millions of beloved household pets. So Nicola found this dog tag, did this research, created a video, and you can find it all on her website, tidelineart.com, about finding Bonzo's tag and this whole tale of research and discovery.
That's awesome.
And after several people watched it, they expressed their desire to donate money for a memorial dedicated to these pets.
Oh.
So a crowdfunding page was set up and almost 3,000 British pounds were contributed to create a memorial, because while there was a memorial to the animals who died in conflict, like there were war horses and dogs that were of service, there was no physical memorial to commemorate all those millions of animals that were euthanized.
How cool.
Yeah. So 1 year later, a specially commissioned ceramic plaque created by the renowned Cornish potter Adrian Brow in memory of those 2.5 million domestic pets was unveiled at the Old Blue Cross Cemetery in London. And it's all because of these finds that these mudlarkers make, and then this passionate research that they do to uncover the history behind these objects that they find.
Oh my God.
It's really something.
When you were listing all the things that it included, it also includes like solving a mystery, researching,
That's
I
right.
love that.
That's right. And again and again and again and again, I heard people talk about how for them, it's this very mostly solitary and very meditative, like respite for them to get down to nature, to get out of the city and go descend a little set of river stairs. And then all of a sudden be on the foreshore and be on the Thames, and sort of the city falls away and it's just you and the tide and history.
We're booking a trip.
All right. But if you're getting excited about mudlarking and all the historical treasures that
don't tell me I can't do it. Do I have to have a license?
Just pump the brakes.
Don't tell me.
If you're going to disturb the foreshore, you have to apply for a permit. In London, a mudlarking license is required from the Port of London Authority, and it is illegal to search or remove artifacts of any kind from the foreshore without one. The PLA, Port of London Authority, states all the foreshore in the UK has an owner. Metal detecting, searching, or digging is not a public right, and as such, it needs the permission of the landowner. So if you're listening in the UK, the PLA site has useful information for permit holders, including maps, rules, and regulations about where digging is and is not permitted, safety, and the tide tables. But I have also received conflicting info on this. Mudlarks are licensed to dig to certain depths. There are 51 licensed mudlarks, and they're licensed to dig up to 1 meter on the Thames, which is pretty deep. Foreshore license allows you to scrape up to 3 inches. And it's been my understanding that no permit is needed for surface finds. Like if you're just browsing and just like sort of like looking at the surface and picking from the surface.
Walking along the Thames.
But there are clear requirements about what you need to do if you find something, like human
Valuable
remains, potential evidence from a crime, something over 300 years old, or treasure. If you do find anything of historical significance or older than 300 years, you have to report it to the Museum of London as part of their portable antiquity scheme. But
that makes sense.
if we wanted to go to London and do this, Cams, which I think we should do on our upcoming international tour.
Absolutely.
Let's just put that out in the world. We could take a mudlarking tour, and though we wouldn't be able to take any of our finds home with us, we could see what all the fuss is about. Or we could mudlark closer to home.
Oh my God. Tell me where. Tell me where.
What if I told you that there was a prime mudlarking site and it was just a short subway ride away?
Please tell me where.
Little baby Camion, I'd like to welcome you to Dead Horse Bay.
Oh my God.
It's just like, you're like, this is great. You're like, this is haunted. You're like, this is great.
Where is
this haunted?
Dead Horse.
All we have to do is take the number 2 train to the last stop. We transfer to the Q35 bus, which stops right in front of the Payless shoe store.
This is getting scary.
We have to tell the driver that we're getting off at the last stop before the bridge. There are no signs pointing the way. It's not on a map, but there are directions. You can walk straight or turn. All the paths lead to Glass Bottle Beach, which is located in Dead Horse Bay. But take heed, adventurers. The walk from the parking lot is through some rough, wet, thorny areas. Decent shoes and insect repellent are highly encouraged.
Susan, this is good because you're scaring everyone else away.
I know.
But we'll be fine.
All of this is from Atlas Obscura, which is the most sparkishly wonderful website going.
It's amazing.
So Dead Horse Bay was given its name sometime in the 1850s when horse rendering plants still surrounded the beach. This is from the New York Times. Dead Horse Bay sits at the western edge of a marshland once dotted by more than 24 horse rendering plants, fish oil factories, and garbage incinerators. From the 1850s until the 1930s, the carcasses of dead horses and other animals from the New York City streets were used to manufacture glue, fertilizer, and other products at the site. Chopped up, boiled bones were later dumped into the water. The squalid bay, then accessible only by boat, was reviled for the putrid fumes that hung overhead.
This isn't enticing me anymore.
I know. I mean,
I like all the items that they have in England.
This is one of those places that sounded like when it was like going full tilt boogie, that it was just like the bowels of hell.
Yes,
like it smelled. Yes. The people that worked there and did those jobs, I mean, how could you ever get that smell out?
Oh,
But, as cars took over and, horse and carriage diminished and horse carcasses then became scarce, by the 1920s, there was only one rendering plant left. And it was during this era, around the turn of the century, that the marsh of Dead Horse Bay began to be used as landfill. So it was filled with trash by the 1930s, and the trash heap was capped, I think, with topsoil, only to have the cap burst. And in the 1950s, and trash spewed forth onto the beach. And since then, all of this ancient garbage essentially has been leaking continually onto the beach and into the ocean from Dead Horse Bay. But we're not talking about plastic, and we're talking about thousands upon thousands of bottles, and broken and intact, many over 100 years old, littering the beach. And then there are other things, leather shoe soles, telephones.
Is there cast iron stuff?
Yes, but here's the thing. So with all of this stuff, when it's sunk down in the mud, it becomes, I think it's called anaerobic, where oxygen doesn't get to it. And so it's preserved. Things like leather are preserved. But the minute it comes to the surface, it starts to break down. Yeah. There was a great piece on abcnews.com, and they followed this artist named Gerard Barbeau, and he said, to describe Dead Horse Bay in a sentence would be difficult. I've traveled to over 30 countries in the world, and I've never seen anything like it. When I first got there, I wanted to sample everything. There were toy metal figurines, ceramic figurines, dolls, doll heads. Everything that we ever used and made in modern civilization was there. This is what we are, the result of what we are. What brought me back to Dead Horse Bay was the sound of glass hitting itself as the tide went in and out, just the tingling sound of chimes. It's like the sirens calling you out to sea. Cami, when you see pictures of Glass Bottle Beach in Dead Horse Bay, it's just literally, it's as billed on the tin, glass. It's just like a beach made out of glass bottles.
Okay, I'm interested again.
No, I can see your face. You're like, I'm interested, I'm disinterested, I'm disgusted, I'm interested again.
I'm back in. Back in.
Gerard, who I was just describing, and Gerard, whose words I was just quoting, uses the items that he's collected in his art and his sculpture. He does what's called assemblage, which is combining found objects and making sculpture out of it. He talked about the joy of discovery, of coming across something and you see its potential and the possibilities that combine with another object, and another object may create something new and different that we haven't seen before. He also described himself like a bowerbird. Do you know what a bowerbird is?
No, what's a bowerbird?
It's a bird who collects It's a bird that collects objects that are similar colors. Like it might collect all shotgun shells or all red plastic, or it's amazing. But they lay them out. Bowerbirds lay out their finds. It looks impossible. They lay them out to attract females. And he said he does the same thing, but not just to attract a female, but because most find it dirty or disgusting. But when they see it on the wall, he's made art out of it.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
bowerbirds.
First, what has been made out of it? If you're like Laura Makelem, the author and the speaker who I quoted earlier, you can make a book about mudlarking, and her book is called Mudlarking. The Mudlark was a charming movie that was made in Britain by the film company 20th Century Fox. It is a fictionalized account of how Queen Victoria was eventually brought out of her mourning for her dead husband, Prince Albert, by a tiny mudlark.
No way.
It's based on the 1949 novel of the same name by American artillery sergeant and newspaperman Theodore Bonnet, who lived from 1908 to 1983.
How cool.
Yep. So you could make a movie out of it. It was starring Irene Dunne as Queen Victoria. A gallerist from the Vice Gallery in London named Florence Evans. She's on Instagram at @flow_finds, and she's an avid mudlarker. She curated an entire exhibition of portraits of modern day mudlarkers alongside some of their mudlarking finds.
Cool.
In addition to her historical and archaeological research and all of the things that yields. Nicola White makes all sorts of things from her finds. She makes driftwood art, and she makes something called Thames glass fish. And it's made out of, these fish are made out of all the pieces of bottles that she finds.
Wow, those are cool.
Aren't they cool? So it could be like from a perfume bottle, from a poison bottle, from a, all of these ancient pieces of glass she makes into fish. And they're not only these beautiful objects and pieces of art, but she also wants people to think about what they discard and what the implications of that are.
Yeah.
This is from
great.
her. This is taken from Nicola's website, tidelineart.com. Walking along the remote shorelines of the Thames and Medway estuaries, I often come across a lot more plastic than I would like to. I collect as much of it up as I can to take away, but before doing so, I will make a picture by the side of the river, then photograph it. This fish is made of over 150 disposable lighters collected along the Thames estuary in less than 2 hours.
Oh.
So she collects this plastic that she finds, and then she makes something out of it, photographs it, shares it on her website, and then she disposes of it properly.
That's lovely, but it's such a bummer that she found that many in 2 hours.
Yes, exactly. It's a lot. That's a lot of lighters. As I mentioned, Nicola also makes videos to document her mudlarking. She has a very well-established YouTube channel, and she shares what she finds on it. Sometimes she creates movements, like her memorial for all the pets euthanized during World War II. Her YouTube channel is Nicola White Mudlark. And then there are TV shows like Mudmen, which is a reality show following, you guessed it, mudlarkers who work on the foreshore of the River Thames, and they are characters.
Where can I watch that show?
Your friend, the internet.
Really?
Yeah. Mudmen.
It's not on.
I watched it straight up on the internet.
God. Okay.
Stream it.
Okay.
And then the question, as always, what do we make of it? What do we make of it, Cams? Mudlarking is a great spark for creating adventures that include seeking and attention to nature and its rhythms. And it's a sort of outdoor meditation that comes from closely examining something for a long period of time. In addition to mudlarking, as I think I said earlier, you can streamlark. If you're drawn to it, it's a really gentle way to get up and out of doors. Depending on where you mudlark, and if you're allowed to remove objects, you can make collage art out of the found objects. You could find an object and then track it back through its historical and sometimes genealogical background. If you visit Dead Horse Bay, you will notice the sounds of the water moving across, over, and around millions and millions of pieces of glass. The sound, I've heard a recording of it. It's so unique. It's so mesmerizing. It's almost like a glass chime. And I'm sparked by the idea of incorporating it into a piece of music or creating a sound bed that could stand alone, or perhaps it's part of a film score or music that accompanies a piece of choreography. One more spark. So mudlarks use a phrase called getting your eye in. To explain this, I'm going to use the words of a man named David Neat from his website, davidneat.wordpress.com. Hey, this is interesting. David Neat describes himself as a maker and a teacher of making. His making encompasses sculpture, model making, painting, graphic work, and design. And he says, another one of the mudlarker's favorite phrases is getting your eye in, or as I think of it, being tuned to the telltale signs of otherness. Much simplified, if you're after the usual things, I'd recommend you tune your eye to pick up circles and parallel lines for a start. Proper circles or parts of them, and especially rings, are not native to this environment, so they can denote pipe bowls facing upwards, end of bottles, bases or rims of pots, and coins. Neither are regular parallel lines natural here. They're one of the chief indications of the man-made, and here they may denote most forms of decoration or simply something straight. So he's talking about when you're mudlarking, getting your eye attuned to those shapes that would not occur in nature.
That's right. Get your eye in.
Getting your eye in. So Laura Maitland, who literally wrote the book on mudlarking, says that you can go mudlarking forever without, say, spotting a Roman coin. But once you spot a Roman coin, then your eye gets in and you start seeing them everywhere. And this reminded me of looking for sparks.
Yes. Yes.
I think to me, one of the most important things we can make of this mudlarking spark is embracing the concept of getting your eye in and looking for sparks. Because as we know, and as we have lived firsthand, Camian, once you start seeing sparks, then you start seeing sparks everywhere. I think that my grandfather had his eye in. Everywhere he went, he was bent over at the waist in the lifelong habit of scanning the ground, looking for ownerless objects. And I bet if he was born in a different part of the world, nearer to the water, he would have been a mudlarker too.
Oh, yes.
Cam's
Bravo.
Mudlarking.
Getting your eye in. I love it.
Should we take a break?
I love it. Let's take a break. Okay.
I was like, do I have my eye in anywhere in life? Do I have my eye attuned? Like Jeff Bowen has his eye in for birds.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And he can not only spot them, but then can spot the fine distinctions and understand, what he's seeing. I think I will only speak for myself. I have my eye in at thrift stores. I can walk by a cluttered, crowded shelf at a thrift store and I can reach through and back and be like, this thing.
If there's like a line or a shape or a color that is mid-century, you can scan and be like, that there's something back there.
I've got my eye in for that.
I do too. I can say that for sure.
Yeah.
And it reminded me also of Puzzle Piece because that's exactly what it is. Like you tune your eye for what you're looking for.
That's right. It is Puzzle Piece.
And you're like, okay, right now I am only looking for something that's got a little blue on
and
the
you
edge.
get better the more you do it.
That's right.
I agree with that. I found something at the thrift store the other day that I didn't realize it. I was going the day after they had a half price sale. Oh. And so it was like
emptied out.
It wasn't emptied out, but it was the dregs. But I didn't know that when I was shopping. And I was like, why am I not finding anything
Nothing
good?
is here. Yeah.
And shoved in the back of a dirty, cluttered shelf, I found this thing and I was like, I barely know what you are, but I know that you are good. And it was wrapped in saran wrap, so you couldn't really open it and see. But I was like, I'm going to take a $2 risk
I'll take a chance on you.
And I got it home and I cleaned it in the sink. It was very mudlarking and it is awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's sort of like a candle holder / lantern. And I love a good candle holder / lantern.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like it's from the 60s. It's, I don't know how to describe it, but it was filthy. It was super dirty and it needed a good cleaning. And it's super cool. And I'm sure everybody was like, ugh, that passed by it, but I had my eye in.
You had your eye in. I really love that phrase. I really love it.
Apparently it also comes from sports, British sport. Have your eye in. I'd never heard it before, but it's super mudlarky. So there you go.
Interesting.
Camian, do you have a spark for me?
Well, I have a spark for you.
I'm excited.
I have a couple of sources I'm going to mention up top and a few that'll come out as we go. But two sources I'd like to mention: in April 2015 Humanities Magazine and PBS NewsHour.
Oh,
Two goodies. Two goodies.
Just kind of like elegant too. And then me, I've got 17.
See, I go for the intellectual sources.
High quality.
No YouTube to be found here. No, I'm kidding.
No Amazon.com. I will pull shit off Amazon.
YouTube.
I'll pull shit off a user review on Amazon.com.
Hey, it's great. And it's like investigative reporting.
Somebody took the time to do that labor, so I don't have
That's
to.
right. That's right. And also, I'm not bashing
I will
YouTube.
not fact check it. No. Because we are not what? Journalists.
No need to fact check. It's on Amazon.com.
What you got for me,
There's
Cams?
something that I think you know about me. Like, I was a little bit of a latecomer to theater. And by late, I mean, I didn't really audition for a school play or musical until like my junior year of high school.
Of high school. Okay.
Because I was cheerleading and I was on all the sports teams and my dad was
academics
a coach. All like nerdy, all of it. Like I did forensics.
You were
I was
busy.
performing and doing public speaking and performing duos and poetry and all of that.
Sure.
So it's not like I didn't have any of it in my life, but my dad was a coach of track and cross country.
Yeah.
And so I went along obviously with everything that my family did, and they played sports. So, fun fact. But then my parents got divorced when I was in my sophomore year. So by my junior year, I was living with my mom, and I think she encouraged me to like pursue the things that like really interested me, which was really wonderful of her to do. But I also think there might have been a slight agenda there, because if I didn't run on the track team, then I wouldn't see my dad as much, and she wouldn't have to see my dad as much,
Oh, boy, that's complicated.
Yeah. I want to believe that her intentions were altruistic and just wanted my and maybe they were.
Okay.
But I don't know. Regardless of her motives, she did push me to do different things. And so the second half of my junior year, I really jumped in. But when I went to college, like I only had that 1 year under my belt. So I didn't think of like majoring in theater. I mean, all the other kids that I knew had been doing it since they were like 10 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was like, well, I love it, and I had such reverence for it. Like going into a theater was like going into a church.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
you could do this. This is amazing. But I got to college and I took an acting class, and I got so much encouragement and support from my professors. I started auditioning, and then I would literally do anything and everything because I felt like I was like catching up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I would
and
do
you were
it.
hungry, I bet, too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Totally. I was like, still like, you're going to let me do this?
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
So for the experience, I did the main stage productions, the lunch bag theater, which was like one acts over lunchtime,
Oh, man.
Yeah. I did senior thesis projects. There was a growing theater company, which was this theater company that traveled to schools and performed for kids. And I did Manhattan Civic Theater whenever they needed someone that was, younger.
Manhattan, Kansas.
The
go.
Little Apple.
There you go.
And so I was doing all of that. And one year I discovered the Ebony Theater, which was this small theater on campus that was run by people of color.
Uh-huh.
I was like, what is this? I didn't know this existed. And they were holding auditions for Anna Devere Smith's Fires in the Mirror.
Wow.
And I got cast in it.
Whoa.
And this experience probably changed my life, and certainly my artistic and creative life, in a big, big way.
Was the cast a blend of people of color?
It was. I'll talk about that again
Laura
in a
Camion?
minute. It was me, people of color, and me.
Laura Camion.
But if you know the show, I'll tell you, I'm going to put a pin in that and I'll tell you more. But yes, it wasn't, they didn't do it as a one-woman show. They did it as a 4-person show.
Got it. Okay.
So being cast in a show with the Ebony Theater introduced me to such a wide and wonderful spectrum of new human beings that I don't think I would have encountered in my college experience because I was so insular up to that point. I had been so absorbed in my own little bubble of theater nerds, and this experience gave me the opportunity to grow as a person and like expand my horizons in totally new ways. And I fucking loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I also loved our director, Sherlyn Henry Brown. She was loud, proud, confident, feminist, and not apologetic about it. And at that time, that was rare. And she was
Maybe in that location.
And in that location. Yeah. And so I was mesmerized by her, honestly. Like, she was so different from me. And I was just like, wow, I want to be like, how can I be more like that?
Yeah.
And she was about as honest and direct as anyone I've ever known. Like, she did not suffer fools. And if she thought you were one, she would let you know real quick. So she had zero tolerance for like faux politeness and bullshit, just zero. And in Kansas, if any Kansas friends are listening, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of it there. There's an emphasis on being nice.
Yeah.
And being nice over being truthful.
Yeah.
Being nice over being direct. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Sherlyn was like, I'm calling you out on that. So she broke me of a few habits that honestly, I don't know if I ever would have let go of otherwise. Like, she really blew my mind. Like, I might have mentioned, although not too specifically here, but I'm a child of a narcissist. And as a result, I was always a people pleaser.
Yeah.
So I was always trying to do and say the right thing. And I wasn't conscious of being like false per se. It was just my coping mechanism. And this is how like I moved throughout the world. Charlene had zero interest in that. She was interested in getting to the real shit. And thank God, I look back now and I'm like so thankful that she saw the capacity in me, like the capability, because I didn't know. Like I had no idea that I was full of bullshit at that time. Like I was nice. I was appropriate, right?
Yeah.
I was polite.
Yeah.
I was the kid with the right answer. So as far as I knew, I was doing what I was supposed to do, but I wasn't really in touch with my own truth, you know? But I did have the desire, I think, to shed myself of that. I just needed someone to show me the way. And Charlene was the perfect guide. For example, Charlene broke me, or at least started the breaking of me, of my habit of saying, I'm sorry. Because, you know, part of being a people pleaser is apologizing for everything, taking the blame for everything, because if something is wrong, it must be your fault. I mean, that was just a reflex. I'm sorry. So one day, I'll never forget this. One day someone came into rehearsal and said, it's raining. And my response, I'm sorry. And I have such a vivid memory in my mind. Charlene heard that exchange from across the room and she swiveled around so fast and she said, what the hell did you say?
Whoa.
And I said, I'm sorry. And she said, that's what I thought. What are you sorry for? Did you make it rain? And I said, no. And she said, you think you're so important, so all powerful that you can make it rain or make it not rain? You think that you could be responsible for the weather even if you wanted to be? And I was like, no, no. And she said, all right, then stop apologizing for it. It's not your fault it's raining. And you apologizing for it raining, it's just bullshit.
Wow.
And I was just like floored by it. But she was completely right on. And I really think of this as like a turning point in my life because I was terrified of her. I'm not going to lie, but I appreciated her honesty so much. You know, obviously honesty can hurt, but sometimes it can be so much better than being surrounded by people who, you know, blow sunshine or are also apologizing for everything, things they don't have any responsibility for. So the people, all of this is to say that the people working on this show had a lifelong personal effect on me, and I'm forever grateful for that. But the work of Anna Devere Smith had a powerful effect on my creative life as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So first of all, if you're not familiar, the content of the show, Fires in the Mirror, is about the true life events that transpired when racial tensions rose to the surface in Crown Heights, Brooklyn in 1991. Crown Heights was heavily populated by a Hasidic Jew community and a large Black community at that time, living together in seemingly peaceful times, but there were simmering tensions.
Yeah.
And one day, a car in a rabbi's motorcade ran a red light. It was hit by another car, causing it to get knocked off the street onto the sidewalk, and it hit and killed an 8-year-old Black boy.
Yes.
Now, ambulances came to the scene, city ambulances, and also private ambulances paid for by the Jewish community. There were accusations that the Jewish ambulances didn't help the young Black boy. Riots started right then and there. The Jewish driver of the car was allegedly beaten up by bystanders. And the next day, a young Orthodox Jewish scholar just walking down the street was stabbed and killed.
Oh, yes.
And many said he was killed as retribution for Gavin Cato, the 8-year-old boy. So the entire thing was a tinderbox of tensions ready to erupt. Stories got told, optics became facts, local politics played a part, and it is so tough because you feel the emotions of everyone in the story and every side and every perspective. You can see how they came to the conclusions that they came to. So Anna Devere Smith told this story as a one-woman show. And she created it by interviewing over 100 different people in that community about what they saw, what they felt, what was at the heart of the matter. She recorded every interview, and then she edited and crafted these monologues into a show, and she played every part.
Yes.
She used their words verbatim, and she studied the physicality of every person. She leaves in every pause, every lip licking, every sniffle, every stutter, every inflection, every unfinished sentence. And this is where she got me. She studied their breathing, when and how they catch a breath, little mouth sounds, how they laugh, how they release tension in their breath, how their breath informs what they're feeling, even if the words belie their emotions. And the more I learned about this, the more I was fucking mesmerized by it. So when Ebony Theater at K-State put on the show, they didn't do it as a one-woman show. They did it as a 4-person show. They cast one black man and one black woman to play those roles. And they cast one white man and one woman to play the Jewish roles.
Okay.
So I played all of the Jewish female characters. There were 5 of them. And I think it was it was an interesting take on it to split it up that way. I don't really know if it was the director's vision or if it was, it's educational theater. So it could have been that they were told, you need to involve more students, or we'll sell more tickets if there's more students there. I don't know what the impetus was, but I do know the opportunity for a mixed race cast to work on a show that is about race relations and race tensions. It's an unforgettable opportunity because then our director being such an honest person, the conversations we got to have in a safe space, in a brave space, in a space where we felt, we were learning and growing. So whatever the reason was, I'm so grateful for that opportunity. I'm grateful they did it that way.
I'm guessing that if it's a cast, the cast is all students, right?
Yeah.
It would be really a challenge to find a single student who could play all the parts that Anna Devere Smith originally crafted for herself. I mean, she is a master impersonator. She is a master mimic.
Yes. Although I want to talk about that because she doesn't call it that. It's more, it's heightened mimicry.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that a little bit. But what I learned about her process has captivated my attention for years. And though, I haven't pursued a career in acting, but when I have acted, I've definitely used her techniques.
Yeah.
And as a writer, I'm absolutely obsessed with the idea of creating a show using a similar process,
like a journalistic
in my life.
Interview process.
I really think I'm going to do it. I really do.
I believe you.
So some people refer to this process as documentary theater.
Yes.
Some call it verbatim theater. But regardless of what you call it, Anna Devere Smith is very often considered the creator of this type of theater, this genre. There's a lot of other people doing it now or doing similar things, like doing their take on it. But Anna Devere Smith is really the founding mother of verbatim theater. So what I want to talk about today is a little bit about her and about her inspiration and this process that she's really created. So tiny bit about her. She was born in Baltimore. She was the first of 5 kids to an elementary school teacher and a coffee merchant. And in middle school, she developed an interest in social justice. She formed a Black student group, among other things. And you're going to...
In middle school.
Get it, at
Anna
that
Devere
time.
Smith. Get it.
I mean, that's,
wonderful.
Yeah. Way ahead of the curve. So after school, she headed to California with her friends, and she wrote in her memoir, Talk to Me, that their goal was, quote, to see America and to make sense each in our own way of what to do with all the breakage and promise that had been released through the anti-war movement, the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy, the beginning of the environmental movement, and the bra burning, brief as it was, of the women's movement. So she auditioned and she was accepted into the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. And very early on, she had a transformative moment. It was a Shakespeare assignment. She found him to be intimidating. And frankly, she was not shy about the fact that she thought he was irrelevant. And she felt quite ambivalent about his work. But nonetheless, her assignment was to take 14 lines of Shakespeare and say it over and over and over again to see what happened.
Wow.
So she picked a speech from Richard II. It's the one where Queen Margaret is cursing the devastation that Richard has brought on. And her lines were, "That foul defacer of God's handiwork, that excellent grand tyrant of the earth." Those were the words that she said over and over and over again. She later claimed that this exercise gave her some kind of transcendental experience. The kind of experience that even 3 more years of her education there, she never had that again. She was so moved by it, this simple, repetitive focus on saying the words. She came to view language itself as the way into the character. She quotes her grandfather, who told her as a little girl, "If you say a word often enough, it becomes you."
Interesting.
So after college, she worked some odd jobs, one of which was at KLM, the airline, and she manned the telephone line, like the complaint line, essentially. So she heard some stories, and she heard, story after story from people all over the country, all over the world, dissatisfied customers. And if you think about it, they're most likely infused with a lot of energy, a lot of emotion.
A lot of dialects.
A lot of dialects. Absolutely. And these stories got her thinking. She began to wonder, if I were to go around and listen to Americans, would I end up with some kind of a composite that would tell me more about America than is evidently there?
Wow. It's a spark. There are sparks everywhere, including your service job at KLM.
That's
on the phone
right.
lines.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So thus began the development of her signature process. She would interview people, then have them depicted on stage. She was looking to portray a greater diversity of personal experience. And eventually, but not at first, but eventually she herself would depict the characters. At first, she had students and friends.
Oh, she had other people do it.
Got
it. Okay.
And she would find people who sort of looked similar, and she'd say to them, "Will you tell us a story?" And we'll have it.
Oh, interesting.
Then you could watch yourself play out on stage.
And then eventually
she's like, "I got
stepped
this.
in.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I'll take all this." So she told the National Endowment for Humanities that she learned to approach the language of her interviewees the way she would a Shakespearean monologue, assuming that the story as told, these sentences in this order with these words, complete with false starts, coughs, laughter, and so on, was the truest and best way to present a character. If they said I don't take that out. So she created various shows this way, including On the Road, A Search for American Character, On the Road, Voices of the Bay Area, Women in Theater, and others. And then Gavin Cato was killed in Crown Heights.
Wow.
And Yankel Rosenbaum was killed as an act of revenge. Anna was invited by the New Voices of Color Festival, organized by George C. Wolfe at the Public Theater, to develop a show based on these incidents.
Wow.
After 8 days of interviews, Anna narrowed down to 25 characters. She edited the interviews, and that content became Fires in the Mirror. Frank Rich, theater critic of the New York Times, called it the most compelling and sophisticated view of urban, racial, and class conflict that one could hope to encounter in a swift 90 minutes.
Fun fact. This was the first Broadway show I ever saw.
No way. You've been sitting on that.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
You saw her.
Yeah, I did. And it's there's another piece that Hunter and I wrote called My First Time.
Yeah.
Where I say that my first Broadway show was Angels in America. That's autobiography. My first show was Fires in the Mirror. And the ticket stubs and the receipts prove it.
Wow.
Yeah. But I remember it pretty clearly. pretty clearly. It
Wow.
made quite an impression as somebody who also was super interested in playing a lot of really different characters that were far from my lived experience.
That's right.
I was shitting myself watching that show.
I can only imagine. I think you'd be so good at this, Susan.
I feel like, I don't know that I agree with that, Cammie. And there are certain performers and artists like Danny Hawk, like Anna Devere Smith, that are Sarah Jones, that are so gifted when it comes to this specific. There's a specific talent that, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Like, these people are masters.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. So soon after Fires in the Mirror, her next project was Twilight, Los Angeles, which was also commissioned. And this one was all about the LA riots that followed when the police officers who beat Rodney King were acquitted.
Yeah.
Again, she interviewed this time like 300 people from every perspective and created the show. And again, the words of the show are verbatim.
Yeah.
So the way she describes her process is this: I have been trying to become America word for word. In the way that you would think about putting yourself in other people's shoes, I'm putting myself in other people's words.
Yes.
I interview people and I learn what they say, and I try to put together a lot of disparate parts of interviews into one whole in order to make a current problem come alive. There are certain points in any interview that I do that people start to speak in a way where the rhythm, leads me to believe that there's emotions stored in there. And so as an actor, emotions are my fuel, and those are the types of moments that I want to reenact on stage.
This role, baby.
This is what I fucking love. Like, when the words that people use are not right on the nose, like they're not seemingly related to what the question was or what the topic is, and yet they're saying everything.
Yeah.
And all the monologues in Fires in the Mirror are like that. One character that I'll never forget is one of the Jewish women. She was an anonymous Jewish woman, but she's talking about how they need to keep their hair short, like no longer than 2 inches long. So she wears wigs.
Yeah.
And she has 4 or 5.
And also they can't show their, right. And nobody but their husband sees their real hair.
That's right. Yeah. And she's talking about this, and she's talking about how she has 4 or 5 wigs, but that it really bothers her that it feels like a lie. Like when she wears a different wig and someone says, "Oh, I love your hair," I have to say, "It's not mine." And in the context of the show, it's such a subtle nod to the idea of perception and reality, innocent lies, total deception. It's just incredible. She's talking about what is happening in that community, but she's not talking about it at all. And I think Anna Devere Smith has such an incredible way of identifying those moments. The whole show is full of them. So this talent that she has to listen between the lines.
I think it also speaks to her ability. This is something that I am deeply sparked by, to interview people. And to interview them in a way so that something as interviewers of people, we are always aspiring to finding those ways of letting people just relax and let their true heart show through. Let their, the most authentic version of them sort of step to the fore.
Yes.
She's a great interviewer.
And she talks about this moment, this is the space that I'm fascinated with. She has said that she is trying to hear the realness that people conceal beneath the comfort of familiar words.
Yeah.
So it's not just a study of the words, but when the words disappear. So when you're interviewing someone and the words drop out, and they are looking for new words, maybe words they're less comfortable with. She's looking at what's happening the moment that the language fails that person. They have to be more creative quickly. They have to dig deeper below the surface to find the words in order to communicate.
This sparks me. I remember reading the biography of Diane Arbus, the famous photographer, and she talked about how she would take a photograph of somebody who was determined to not let, like say she was taking a photograph of a socialite and they were determined not to let that mask slip. She would basically it was like an endurance contest and basically stay with them until the moment the mask slipped when they weren't putting it on, and that would be the photo.
Boom.
That would be the one. And I almost, not that I don't, when I read Diane Arbus's biography, it almost seemed like at times, like a viper strike where they were just waiting for that moment to get in there.
Yeah.
And I don't think it doesn't feel that way with Anna Deavere Smith. It's almost she's almost like a camera that's rolling, giving people the time and the space. And there's that whole, if you wait long enough, they'll say it.
They'll
say
themselves.
their truth. They'll reveal themselves.
That's right. And people always do. But she's never looking for a gotcha moment.
No,
she's
that's it. That's the distinction.
Yeah, she's not trying to make fun of them, even when she puts them on stage.
No.
And this is the exploration that I'm fascinated with. Even just now, I wasn't planning on saying this, but it just occurs to me, let's say we took Gavin's interview.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard it, go back and listen to it. It's amazing. Let's say you took that, made a monologue out of it, and had someone perform that.
Yes.
Gavin is giving us deep and intimate information about something that matters a lot to him, his grandmother. He starts to cry. He realizes, wow, this is a lot of emotion. He starts to make fart noises.
Sounds.
Yeah, from his armpit. Laugh, cry, and move to the next thing. If you saw someone quote unquote perform that, you would lose your mind, I think, because it's so real.
Do you mean perform it well?
Yes, of course. You'd have to perform it well.
As you're talking, I'm like, well, that'd be a hell of a challenge.
A hell of a challenge, but that's what I think she does. She's looking for those moments.
The key, not to sound like your woo-woo acting teachers, but the key is the breath.
The key is the breath. So I'm going to talk about that too, because she studies exactly that. Every intake, she leaves it all in.
Yeah.
So I find myself in real life, noticing these things in daily life and wanting to reenact them. Again, not in a way to make fun of someone, but because I'm literally fascinated with the idea of wow, they talk like that. What does that feel like? They talk so much louder than I do, or they laugh so much more free. What does that feel like?
Yeah.
Or the way someone overpronounces something like ing. Should we be working? I'm just thinking, and then I feel I just want to try it.
Sure.
I just want to know, what does that vocal pattern feel like coming out of me?
Yeah.
And I just think she inspires me so much. And I think that her taking on those words and their physicality and, more importantly, their breath, I feel like it elevates it from mimicry to the embodiment of that person. Like she said, the language is the way into the person. And I think it's really fascinating because, sometimes when you're building a character, you don't have someone to model it after that specifically. But because she does, she uses every bit of information she can get from them.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm fucking floored by her. We've talked a few times about what drives us to create, and our friend Meta Wagner wrote a book about it. What creative type are you? And one of the types that she describes is the activist. Are you driven to create so that you can affect change on the world? And hands down, Anna Deavere Smith would fall into this category 100%. She has said, I come at this more like a lawyer who would say that everyone has a right to a fair trial, or a journalist or a priest who would hear the confession. I'm interested in complicating the narrative and revealing to the people in my audience that there are many narratives. The more roots you have going off in different directions and grabbing the ground, you're probably going to be a stronger tree. And that would be my objective. All of my work of art is a form of activism. I don't have the answers. I don't indict people. I can let the judges do that. I can let the media do that. I am a dramatist. I believe that the theater and other art forms are an opportunity to convene people around these issues and ask them while they're sitting together to do something.
Wow.
So it's just so clear she's found a way to combine her interest in social justice that started, in middle school with her performance abilities. So look up, I won't go through them all, but she has many, many, many plays that she's done in this style. She's won many, many awards. And frankly, I'm just obsessed with the idea of writing in this way as a writer and a performer, like working in this way. I think there's so many things you can do with it. You could explore a local issue this way.
Yes.
An issue at your school or in your workplace. If you have the kind of workplace that would let you be creative. I'm obsessed with this one. You could create from interviews with family members. If your family is full of interesting characters, as I know mine is, you could explore an incident or a family secret from a variety of perspectives, right?
Wow.
I mean, it's really limitless. And I think that the key
That's really a good spark.
Right? I think the key to success, though, is the objectivity. Because writing to prove one side or prove one point is correct is really less compelling. I think she's onto something that you have to show all of it without an opinion.
Yes, there is something when I say she's a camera. There is something where she just serves it up to you. And I know you just said it's heightened, but it is not over the top. And it is not, there's never like that sort of edge of judgment about it. It feels like you're just being served it up straight.
Yeah.
And I also think it's so many sparks. I love your idea of like, even sort of like take it like a really fun but innocuous story about the time that the dog stole the Thanksgiving turkey off the table, and then tell it from grandma's point of view and tell it from your mother's point of view, who has spent the last 72 hours making the turkey. Tell it from your little brother's point of view, who doesn't give a shit about it and is just interested in their Micronauts. Like telling it from like those different perspectives based on interviews with them is a really funny idea. But it's also, there's something about building your own empathy and walking in other people's shoes that is super powerful.
Here's one less funny, but I dare you, if you have an incident in your family that sounds a little bit like, oh, I don't know, they haven't spoken to each other in 20 years. Like Uncle so-and-so and Aunt so-and-so stopped speaking.
Yeah.
Why? And what is that about? And could you talk to each of them? Could you talk to the people that were around when that will was read and someone got mad that they weren't left the thing?
Oh my God.
I mean, it's
you are
intense.
Just poking a hornet's nest, Cammy.
I am,
You're telling
but
our
what
listeners
if
for their undergrad theater final to poke a hornet's nest?
Poke it. We were talking in your spark, poke it. This entire episode is about poking it.
Oh my gosh.
But no, I think there could be a family out there that could be, changed by something like that.
Here's something this is just a hanging, spinning question mark that I don't know the answer to, but I feel like the world has changed since I was in school and since I was like very much moved to make work like this. Mm-hmm. And now with the world being what it is, as I'm pointing myself, is a white lady like me allowed to make work where I'm portraying people who have different lived experience than I do?
I think it's a good question. I think she struggled with that question too. When she did Twilight, she interviewed Korean Americans and absolutely, this was not her history. I think that it's different when you're telling all the stories. If you're doing all 25, And I also think you can do it and say, here's our cast of 4. And we're going to have, Caucasian people play the Caucasians and people of color play the people of color.
Yeah.
Like, I think there are ways to address that if the overall story is important enough. Interestingly, I had the opportunity to go see Fires in the Mirror at the Signature Theater in New York City, and a man has been cast as the one-person show.
Those shoes are big shoes.
Those shoes are big shoes to fill, but I think it also is interesting in relation to your question because she was a woman and she played all the parts, every race, every religion, every gender. And now she was like, when you cast this show, please look at men too, because there's no reason why the man can't play the women and all of the religions and all the races.
Best person for the job.
Best person for the job. Absolutely. But I think it was really interesting. I'm off book here for a second. I remember reading that she had said after Fires in the Mirror, there was a Black man who was giving her feedback, all of it very positive. And then he said, my only criticism is, couldn't you show a strong Black man up there? And she was like, well, Gavin Cato's dad, strong Black man, Al Sharpton, Mike Tyson, those are all figures in the show. So she was like, oh, there were strong Black men up there, but he couldn't see it in my body. He was not able to take them in as strong Black men because I was the person portraying them.
Got it. And
so the reverse could be true now with the show with Michael Benjamin Washington in it. Will you have women think, oh, well, I didn't really see the female voices up there. I doubt it because he's really, really, really amazing. But you can't ever get past that. People are going to have those blocks of you don't look like the person that you're portraying.
Yeah.
But I also just think that's really, really, really interesting. So I do just want a shout out. Michael Benjamin Washington, he was phenomenal. The director, Sahim Ali, really made some fantastic choices. It's very minimal.
I have I am like vibrating right now as you say this.
I was in the audience yesterday just like, feeling exactly that. Like, oh my God. It flows so quickly and smoothly from character to character. And the mirror plays a very prominent part in this in ways that
the aforementioned mirror.
The aforementioned mirror. So it really brought back so many memories. The show really holds up. In fact, the saddest thing about it is how relevant it still is.
Yeah.
I wish we didn't need a play that's 25 years old to mirror back our social issues to us.
Yeah.
I wish we could watch it and say, wow, those were crazy times. I can't believe
the past was so crazy.
That it is in the past, but it's still here. So I'm thankful that this work is being done and that this incident won't be forgotten and the fact that we still have work to do won't be overlooked.
Wow. What a great spark.
Thanks, Blackwell.
Wow. This is like awakening an old, passion of mine that I sort of have, put up on the shelf.
Susan, we were just talking before we started recording today. We were just talking about wanting to get into the meaning of certain sounds that people make or pauses they make.
Yes, we were.
And getting to the bottom of that's at the heart of her work.
It is.
What is the emotion behind that? It's a small sound, but something's there.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's so much in this. And as a younger person, I think I would have immediately been like, how can I make work that is similar to that work? And now older, slightly more sedentary Susan is like, there's something about the empathy piece and getting inside, walking in other people's shoes, breathing their breath and seeing the world from their perspective, whether that's the people of Crown Heights or whether that's your aunt and uncle who haven't spoken to each other or
that's right.
It's an interesting, I don't know. I'm very interested in the empathy piece.
I think the acting piece of it fascinates me too, because when you are creating a character from scratch, there can sometimes be either a doubt in your mind or a doubt in a director's mind of like, ooh, that's a little over the top when you try something. Like it's not believable. It's too much. And then you see a show like this where it is verbatim.
Yeah.
The physicality, the
I wonder how that's conveyed in the script.
I don't know.
Or do you get a set? Do you get a set of the recordings so that you can study the breath?
We saw some. Yeah, when we were doing it, we saw some. I can't vouch for.
Oh, interesting.
And I just think like you watch her work and you're like, well, you can't say like, oh, no one laughs like that. Oh, no one is as ridiculous as that.
That's right.
They are.
Well, I remember when all the work of hers that I've ever seen, I was struck by how it felt incredibly authentic.
Yes.
It was sort of like, oh, I may not have met that person, but man, that feels real.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that it's bringing to mind is I had an opportunity last summer to do the Encore's production of a civilian show called Gone Missing. And a lot of that is based on interviews with people who have lost things.
Ooh, interesting.
And that could be an object, that could be a person, that could be a lover, things that have gone missing.
Yeah.
And there was this piece that was assigned to me, and it was this slim little monologue, but it was a woman who, like, maybe she was in a nursing home, and she basically was complaining about how, you know, things go missing, and that blaming the staff for things that have gone missing. And you don't get the benefit of having been in the room when the interview was conducted or listening to any sort of like archival recording. You just have to take a choice and take a leap and figure it out.
Yeah.
And I remember this spark that you were sparking on me so hard today was awakened last summer when it was very vulnerable. I was like, I'm going to take a big, scary swing.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, I'm adult enough that I could say to the creative team, I'm going to try something, and this is really vulnerable. And doing it, and basically it awakened that old thing in me that I used to do more frequently, which was channeling a voice that was so far from my lived experience, just that sort of transformation if you have a little touch of that gift, it's fun to take that ride.
Well, I think a lot of people are drawn to acting. I know I had permission to do and be and speak in ways that I was not allowed to or did not let myself in real life.
Yeah.
So like playing a real bitch on stage, it was the most liberating
Somebody
thing.
Who can be very free with their anger.
That's
like
right.
That. Yeah.
So liberating, because it's like, I hadn't
That's what
let myself.
That character last night that in Gone Missing was so angry. And I'm just like the nicest little buttercup, but it's fun.
But you are human.
But it's fun to get let off the leash.
It is. Yeah. And because you're
be
human,
real scary.
Every part of you are able to identify that part of yourself.
Love it.
So I'll just say one more thing about this. I love doing this Spark because when I went to see the show again and started writing the Spark, I just realized I never told Sherilyn Henry Brown what a difference she made in my life. I'm going to find her. I want to tell her that show and that group of people, Zach Bays, Billy Bill, all you guys truly changed my life. I think truly changed the course of who I became as a human being.
Yeah. As an artist and as a person.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I know we couldn't leave without some tears, but I just
Well, when you were talking about her, I was like, ooh, tell her now. Tell her now.
I want to tell her. I got to find
her. Say what you mean to say.
I gotta
Did we
find
learn
her.
anything from The Art of Dying Well? Say what you mean to say.
John Mayer. Say what you need to say.
Or John Mayer.
Sorry, that was not the reference that you meant. Cam, what are you doing?
I was going to say, is that it?
That's it.
That's a good one.
Well, you gave a good one. Oof.
Man.
Okay.
We hope that this all put another bunch of sparks in your file. Hey, I've got an idea.
Oh.
If there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and you fanned it, oh boy, we have gotten some good emails. We got it. We have to do a mailbag.
We need to do a mailbag.
We're going to do a mailbag when we get our shit together.
Yeah.
If you've taken a spark and fanned it into a creative flame, as many of you have, and you'd like to share that, please email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com, or even better, submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com. Do it. Don't just think about doing it. Do it.
Really do it. And we will take your feedback. We're happy to, but you know the price of admission. First, you need to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
So sweet. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, rate. If you don't mind, 5-star review it.
Please.
If you like this podcast, you know what would be amazing? And we mean this from the bottom of our hearts. Share it with people you love. Share it with people who you think would also like it. And if you didn't like it, you should see somebody about that.
If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that has been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You got to drive it. You got to park it. You got to walk down to the riverbank and quietly mudlark it.
That's awesome. You got to take it and make it. Yay! Bye!
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the chief creative officer and chief marketing officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.